Today, we're going to be learning about Introduction to Government, and this will cover some of our standards we'll be seeing throughout the year. SS6 CG1, CG3, CG4, and CG2, where you'll be comparing and contrasting various forms of government and explaining forms of citizen participation in government. Your learning targets are to explain citizen participation in autocratic and democratic governments and to describe the two predominant forms of democratic governments, parliamentary and presidential. If you compared all the governments in the world, you would find one thing in common: someone is in charge. The question is who? There are many different forms of government that you're going to be learning about today. Some have one leader who has all the control, others give power to the people, some have religious rule, and some don't have anybody to rule them. Here are some of the forms of government that exist in the world today. In an anarchy, nobody is in control, or everyone is, depending on how you look at it. Sometimes the word anarchy is used to refer to an out-of-control mob. When it comes to government, anarchy would be one way to describe the human state of existence before any governments developed. It would be similar to the way animals live in the wild, with everyone looking out for themselves. Today, people who call themselves anarchists usually believe that people should be allowed to freely associate together without being subject to any nation or government. There are no countries that have anarchy as their form of government. An autocracy is a government in which one person has all the power. Citizens have very limited role in the government. There are two main types of autocracy: a monarchy and a dictatorship. In a monarchy, a king or queen rules the country. The king or queen is known as a monarch, and they usually come to power through their family line. The current king or queen's oldest child becomes the next king or queen. We'll find these over in the United Kingdom. In some monarchies, especially those in historical times, the monarch held all the power and had the final say over the government. In modern times, monarchs usually share power with other parts of government. Often they are also subject to the country's constitution. A dictatorship is a form of government where one leader has absolute control over citizen lives. If there is a constitution, the dictator has control over that too. So it doesn't mean much. Although other parts of the government may exist, such as courts or a lawmaking body, these branches always do what the dictator wants them to do. They do not represent citizens. In an oligarchy, a small group of people has all the power. Oligarchy is a Greek word that means rule by a few. Sometimes this means that only a certain group has political rights, such as members of one political party, one social class, or one race. For example, in some societies, only noble families who own land could participate in politics. An oligarchy could also mean that a few people control the country. For example, a junta is a small group of people, usually military officers, who rule a country after taking it over by force. A junta often operates much like a dictatorship, but that the difference is that several people share power instead of just one. A theocracy is a government that recognizes God or a divine being as the ultimate authority. In a theocracy, religious law is used to settle disputes and rule the people. A theocracy can also be a democracy, dictatorship, monarchy, or just about any other kind of government. For example, the Republic of Iran recognizes Islamic law, but Iran's citizens vote to elect their leaders. Modern theocracies are usually found in countries where the population is strongly religious. In a democracy, citizens hold the political power. Supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation involving free elections. There are two basic types of democracies. In a parliamentary democracy, citizens elect members of parliament, and then the members select the leader. The leader works with or through the legislature. The legislature, which is parliament, holds much power and elects the prime minister to be the chief executive. So the people do not elect the prime minister in a parliamentary democracy. Parliamentary democracies often have a head of state who represents the country at ceremonial functions and typically holds very little power. On the other hand, we have a presidential democracy, which is a system of government in which the leader is constitutionally independent of the legislature. Citizens directly elect, they vote for the leader, who works separately from the legislature. In countries with presidential democracies, power is divided between separate executive and legislative branches. The chief executive is elected by the people and acts as the head of state in some cases. An example of a presidential democracy would be the United States. Now, it's real important to know the difference when it comes to leadership. The chief executive is the head of the government. This is the country's top powerful official who manages the day-to-day activities of the government. And then you have the head of state, and that's a leader who officially represents the nation during ceremonial events, but in reality holds very little power. So if we were to look at the United Kingdom, the chief executive would be the prime minister, and the head of state would be the Queen of England.